All right, hello. My name is Sarah Merrill, and I'm going to be covering data flow diagrams in this presentation. I'm sorry, I was going to try and show my face this time as people suggested, but my camera isn't working, so you're going to have to stare at my boring slides again. I'm sorry. All right, just a little introduction of what I'm going to cover in the presentation. First, I'm going to talk about what is a data flow diagram. I'm going to go over a little bit of history, some of the advantages and disadvantages, go over the notation, cover some examples, and how it can relate to our class project. All right, so what is a data flow diagram? Data flow diagrams, often abbreviated to DFD, are a representation of the flow of the data. So it's kind of how it gets its name. It models the processes aspect of an information system. It shows the input and the output, where the data will go and where the data will be stored. It does not show timing of processes or whether processes are in sequence or parallel. Just a little bit of the history. Data flow diagrams were proposed by Larry Constantine, the original developer of structured design. And they are based on Martin and Estrin's data flow graph model of computation. They both visually look pretty similar, but they're read quite differently. Starting in the 1970s, data flow diagrams were a popular way to visualize major steps in software development. Usually they are used for computer systems, but they can be used for business processing models as well. Some of the advantages is that data flow diagrams give an overview of the system. They just kind of lay out a basic blueprint of everything that will be going on. They're easy to trace errors, and they are a good guide to other members of the team. Data flow diagrams are appropriate for giving a general summary of the processes in an information system. Some of the disadvantages are that they can be difficult to display complicated systems clearly. If you have a really complex system, it can be hard to organize a data flow diagram so that everything still isn't like too messy. Another disadvantage is that it doesn't show the timing of processes. They also don't show whether processes are in sequence or parallel to each other. So data flow diagrams aren't appropriate for more detailed representations of single processes. And it's mainly just for the overview process of how information is flowing in the system. All right, so the basic notation. There are two versions, the Jordan and DeMarco and the Gain and Sarson. They're pretty similar, but as you can see, a few differences in the process and data storage symbols. The notation represents four different things. We have the process, the data storage, the external entities, and the data flow. So the process is anything that processes or manipulates data in the system. The data storage, those are things like databases, and it's where the data is stored in your information system. Then we have the external entities, and these are the inputs and outputs of the system. And these are things often like the customer and how the customer inputs to the system, or how the system outputs to the customer. That customer is the external entity. And then we have the data flow, which is the arrow, and it connects the processes, data store, and external entities. It shows how the data is flowing in between those three different things. All right, so this is a really simple example, and this is using the Jordan and DeMarco notation. In this example, we just have a basic single line flow that the data flow diagram is representing. So we have the database, which is the data storage, and information flows from that database to the system process. And this processes, manipulates the data in some way, and then the information flows from that process to our external entity, or our output, which is the customer. So that's just a really simple example. In this example, which is done in the Gain and Sarson notation, it represents some sort of video rental system. And we have our two inputs and outputs here, which are the external entities, customer and manager. And the customer can input to the system in two different ways. We have the video request to rent a video, or the request to return a video. So following this request here, data flows from the customer to the rent video process. And the rent video process processes that data, and information flows out of it in two ways. One is sending the bill to the customer, and another is sending the rental information to a rental database. And from that rental database, information flows to this process down here, number 3, to create a general rental report. And when that is created, data then flows to the manager and outputs to the manager here. So similar flows and processes and databases happening with return video as well. So the data flow diagram shows all of the processes where data is being stored and the outputs and inputs in this video rental system. All right, and how we could use this for our class project. With the assignment tracker, we could use a data flow diagram to do a basic overview of all the processes and how data is flowing within our system. Our external entities could be things like the student and teacher, because those are the inputs and outputs of our system. We would need a database to store the assignment information, and there would be processes like selecting an assignment, inputting an assignment, or completing assignment. And the data flow diagram could help visually represent all of this information and make a good blueprint for what we are doing. So thank you all for listening. Just in conclusion, we covered what a data flow diagram is, just a little bit of the history, some of the advantages and disadvantages, the 2 types of notation, a couple examples of data flow diagrams, and how it could relate to our class project. All right, thank you.